La 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 la. All right. Good morning. Good morning, lovely people. Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing this morning? All right. We are here this morning. We are on a roll. We are doing all that we got to do this morning, and that includes reading a chapter from the book of Grace Under Fire. For those of you who are just coming in, a lot of um special welcome to you this morning. Thank you so much for coming in. I sincerely appreciate you all. For those of you who have been following us as we've been reading this book, this book has taken us on a high, on a low, and back on a high, and I am loving it. Yesterday, as we were reading, we saw where Isabel left Boston and she's on her way to Scotland. She has arrived in Scotland actually all by herself. She just got up and left on a whim without waiting for Dylan to accompany her, without telling anybody that she was leaving prematurely. And she's off. And she's now in Scotland. She has rented a car. She has already dinged that car. And she is now in a hotel. And Michael is after her. So he has arrived in Scotland as well. He has knocked on her door and she is shocked to see that he is there. Now we are going to move on to chapter 22. Let's find out what happened between Isabel and Michael in Scotland. Chapter 22 of Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. Damn, but he was happy to see her. Michael walked into the room, quietly shut the door, and leaned back against it. He was weak with relief. Thank God she was all right. No one had gotten to her. The, tight, the tightness he had been carrying around in his chest since he had heard that she had left Boston was finally easing, and he could breathe. Isabel backed away from the door. Why are you here? It was a reasonable question, she thought. She sat down on the side of the bed and waited for him to answer. And waited. And waited. He had such an intense look on his face. She couldn't imagine what he was thinking. Michael, I'm here to take you home, he said with both relief and urgency in his voice. The worry of the last few hours had been torture, but now that he was here with her and she was okay, it was time for action. Why would I want to go home? I just got here. He hated answering her because he knew he was going to scare her. Something has happened. He began slowly walking towards her. She jumped to her feet. Oh my God, did someone in the family get hurt? Is it Kate? Is it Dylan? Her mind raced with dire possibilities. He put his hand up. Everyone back home is fine. You are the one in trouble. You ever hear them say, Father, I must steal and think a cool breeze? Yeah, that is Isabel right now. Before she could demand an explanation, he pulled her into his arms and hugged her. I was worried about you, but you are all right. Isabel was utterly confused. Why was he acting so strange? It wasn't like him to be emotional. And yet, she had to admit, after the shock of finding him at the door wore off, she really was happy to see him. Then her mind cleared, and she remembered he had broken her heart. She also remembered the lovely conversation she had had with Amanda. Broaching that subject was going to spark a whopper of a fight. She had been building steam since she left the party, but it would have to wait until later. First, she wanted to know why she was in trouble. She hadn't been in Scotland long enough to do anything wrong. She tried to step back, but he wasn't ready to let her go, and if room service hadn't interrupted, she thought he might have kissed her. She decided she would let him, and after he explained what his sudden appearance was all about, she would give him hell. Michael opened the door, and Brody, The proprietor of the small hotel, wearing a white apron over his tweed suit, carried her breakfast tray in and placed it on the table. Cook added another cup and saucer and a few more scones and such for your mister. Her mister? Isabel didn't correct him. That was thoughtful of her, she said. Please tell her thank you. Turning to Michael, he said, per your instructions, I changed the name on the register and will use your credit card for the charge. Will you be staying another night? I'm not sure yet, Isabel said, wondering why he directed his question to Michael. At the same time, Michael said, no, we'll be leaving on a flight to Boston tonight. I'll keep the room available for you just in case. Isabel followed him to the door. Thank you, Brody. No, 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 no. I should be thanking you, he replied. Your suggestions were spot on. I'll let you get to your breakfast. Michael waited until he had closed the door, then asked, what were your suggestions? Before she could answer, he said, you don't give any, did you? I'm betting you didn't say anything. You just listened, didn't you? Good guess, she said. Not a guess, he corrected. I just observed your past behavior. Isabel took a seat at the small table, lifted the cozy from the teapot, and poured the hot liquid through the strainer into her cup. She offered Michael a cup of tea, but he declined with a shake of his head. Sit down, Michael. You look so tense. When he was settled in the chair across from her, she said, now, are you ready to tell me why you came all this way, why you came to take me back to Boston, and why you think I'm in trouble? Yes, he said. But first, I need to know if you have contacted anyone connected to Glenn McKenna. No. What about Donald Gladstone, the solicitor handling the estate? Or James Reed, the man harassing you? Have you talked to either of them? No, she insisted. I spoke to Mr. Gladstone right before I went to Boston, but I haven't spoken to him since. I don't have to worry about Reed anymore. Why not? I got a text from him yesterday. He apologized and told me he wasn't going to pressure me anymore. He hopes I'll let him bid against other offers. I guess he's finally convinced I'm not going to sell Glenn McKenna, at least not to him. Nodding, he said, okay. So no one knows you're here. Thank God, he silently added. There were some teenagers at the airport who recognized me. How many? I don't know, 15 or 20. They took some photos and made a bit of a fuss. Why do you think I'm in trouble? He was about to ruin her day, and he was sorry about that. She had been so excited to see the Highlands. He felt as though he were snatching one of her dreams away from her. Remember the bloody flash drive you gave Nick to get cleaned up for you? Yes. Oh no, did the blood seep inside and ruin it? It is even possible. Is that even possible? It isn't yours. I'm sorry, what? It was in my coat pocket. Of course it's mine. No, 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 it isn't. Detective Walsh put it in your pocket before he collapsed. She thought for a long minute, recalling the details of the incident, and then said, he was clawing at me. I thought he was trying to hold on so he wouldn't fall. What was on it? Michael had downloaded the flash drive on his computer, but he had also made a printout because he knew Isabel would want to read it over and over again, like he did until she believed it. Everett the tech is calling it a kill order. A kill order? Isabel looked up at Michael. He wasn't kidding. He reached inside his pocket and produced the folded papers, handed them to her. Isabel put her teacup down and started reading. Michael waited patiently, watching her eyes widen as the reality of what he had just told her began to sink in. The flash drive belonged to Detective Walsh. Before he could tell her what he and his brothers had learned, she said, I wouldn't believe it. I learned a great deal about Detective Walsh. He is a good and honorable man. He has received at least five commendations over the years, and his co-workers rely on him. He didn't come to Boston to kill. I don't know where he got the flash drive, but I'm sure he was trying to protect me, and that's why he got shot. Isabel, no one. It was as far as he could get before she continued with her passionate defense of Detective Walsh. He was happily married for 26 years, and he was devastated when his wife died, but he had to keep it together for their daughter, Caitlin. He flies back to Boston as often as possible. He grew up there and comes from a large family. She added, he's going to move back there next year. How do you know all this? Caitlin told me. It took the police a while to find her. She was visiting friends in San Francisco. She flew back to Boston and has been at her father's bedside almost every minute. No one thinks the flash drive belongs to Walsh. Then why did you let me get on and on about it? I couldn't get you to stop, he said. She decided to read the succinctly written kill order once again. Then she carefully folded the paper and handed them back to Michael. I don't want you to be afraid, Michael said. Her back stiffened. Afraid? I'm not afraid. I'm furious. She jumped up and began to pace. Is James Reed behind us? Of course he is, she decided. He's probably getting a whooping bonus if I sell to the Patterson Group, and he represents them, remember? Every time he called, he sounded more determined, right? Michael didn't answer fast enough. She stopped in front of him and asked, am I right? No, you're not. Why not? Now she sounded disgruntled. If you are dead, you can't sign the land over to them. I realize that, but you get Glenn McKenna on your next birthday, he began, the day after tomorrow. What? My birthday is Wednesday, the day after tomorrow, she repeated. He nodded. We'll celebrate early on the plane. I'm not going to be on a plane tomorrow. You need to get back to Nathan's Bay, he insisted. You'll be safe there until the investigators find out who is behind this kill order. She shook her head. No, that's not what I'm going to do. And thus began a blistering argument that lasted a good 20 minutes. Unfortunately for Michael, Isabel made sense. There was also the fact that she was far more stubborn than he was, yet another trait he couldn't help but admire. I'm going to drive north toward Dunross, stay off the highways, and talk to people along the way. Once I get up into the highlands, someone will know something about Glen McKenna. There's a reason someone beside the Patterson Group wants the land, and I want to know what it is. I didn't come to Scotland just to turn around and run back home because of a threat, especially if I don't know who is making it or why. Besides, I know I told you I have to be present in the solicitor's office to sign papers to receive the inheritance. You just forgot. No, I did not forget. I know you have to wait until your birthday to sign papers and get the land. But does it have to happen on your birthday? I know it can't happen before, but what about after? Could you schedule to meet the solicitor a month later? She squirted the question. I'm going to sign the papers on Wednesday. Michael made one more attempt to reason with her, but in the end, reluctantly conceded. Then I'm not letting you go alone. He waited for her to object, and when she remained silent, he said, no argument? Okay, then. Isabel tried not to let her reaction show. Why was she so relieved he was going with her? She should be trying to get rid of him, shouldn't she? Yes, she said. Whoever wants me gone will find out I'm here. But if we stay off the beaten path and I don't tell anyone who I am, we should be all right. For a while. God, she was naive. You have millions of followers on the internet, he reminded. I won't use my credit cards with my name. You are going to be recognized. Not, not if we only stop in small villages. Sweetheart, the people living in these small villages know how to use the internet. Yes, of course they do. I'm still going to stop and talk to them. I'll just have to be cautious. Cautious? He wasn't sure she knew what the word meant. She had crazy faith in people, and it was going to get her in trouble one day. Oh, hell yes, he was going with her. He hated that he hated that they had to stay until Wednesday, but he vowed he would make it as safe as possible for Isabel. He didn't care if the law was on his side or not. He would kill anyone who tried to hurt her. Admittedly, he thought her demands were outrageous. Driving from village to village in the highlands so she could talk to people was crazy, and yet he had agreed. Maybe he was crazy too. Isabel, we need to establish some ground rules. She was so thankful he was going with her, she decided not to complain, unless, of course, her, his ground rules were unreasonable. I'm listening. He looked at his watch and then said, after you pack, we'll check out and head north. You can have the rest of the day and evening to talk to people and ask questions. I'll drive you wherever you want to go. You can also have all day Tuesday and Tuesday evening. But Wednesday, you and I are in Donruss meeting with the solicitor. Agreed? But what if? And Isabel, he continued as though she hadn't spoken, this schedule could change in a heartbeat. If I feel there's going to be trouble or if it becomes dangerous, we aren't stopping to talk to anyone. Agreed? What if I need more time to? Poor Isabel. She is protesting and protesting, but Michael is not having it. Michael is not having it. He is determined that he's going to keep her safe. Wednesday, Isabel. We are in the Donald Gladstone office on your birthday, which is Wednesday. Agreed? His tone was hard, and she knew he wasn't going to bend. Agreed, she said. Any other rules? Poor Isabel. You don't go anywhere without me, and I mean anywhere. What about the ladies' room? If it's empty, you can go in, and I'll stand right outside the door. I won't let anyone else in until you come out. She thought he was taking that rule a bit too far, but didn't argue. Okay, what else? You don't tell anyone your name, and if you are asked any questions, all your answers have to be vague, or you don't answer at all. Not understanding at all would be rude. Not answering at all would be rude, but if that's what you want, I'll do it. Anything else? She asked. And before he could answer, she said, if anyone wants to know how we are related, I would say I'm your sister. Oh, hell no. It was just a suggestion. No need to get prickly. Okay, I'll be vague or just don't answer. Right? He agreed. Let them think whatever they want. What happens when what happens when we check into the hotel? I'll check us in, he said, and wherever we stay, we are in the same room. I'm not sure that's a good idea, considering same room, he repeated, his tone unbending. She slowly nodded. Okay, she said. In a whisper, she added, if you think you can handle it. He heard her. Of course I can. Try not to sound irritated, she asked. Are there any other rules? No, that about covers it. The way Michael was looking at her now, as though he wanted to say more but was holding back, was making her very nervous. Filling the silence, she said, you should eat something. She poured a glass of orange juice and placed it in front of him. Then she took a scone from the basket and began to spread clotted cream on it. I don't understand how you can go with me. Don't you have to be somewhere else soon? With your rigid schedule, how can you take time off? My rigid schedule? I don't have a rigid schedule. She slowly nodded. Yes, you do. Would you like me to explain? I know how your mind works, Michael. Scoffing at her boast, he said, "You do? Enlighten me." She took a sip of the tepid tea. "You are always going after the next difficult challenge, and you always finish what you start, usually spectacularly. You stay the course, or, as you love to tell me, focus on the task at hand, and you never allow deviation or distraction. You are inflexible when you want something, and you don't let anyone or anything get in your way. How would you know I'm inflexible? Anyone who looks into the background Anyone who looks into your background would know you are goal oriented. You set the goals and then you exceed them. You don't know what the word defeat means. Of course I do, he argued. I fail all the time, and I'm not inflexible. It's not a flaw, she said. You are also inflexible in your values, and so are your brothers. I know what your next challenge is, and I know that you are going to do well and end up at the top because that's what you always do. She set the tray aside, then folded her napkin and placed it on the table. "Do you wonder how I know all this?" she asked. "It's simple. There aren't any secrets in the Buchanan family. You know that? I heard Dylan telling Kate that you're going to Quantico soon to train to be an FBI agent, and you are hoping you'll be assigned to the anti-terrorism department, whatever that is." She continued, "You told Dylan you will stay with me in you will stay with the bureau until you retire, but Theo isn't giving up. He wants you to work for the Department of Justice and put your law degree to good use." Michael leaned back in his chair and looked amused. Then he said, "There aren't any secrets in the Buchanan family. Are you sure about that?" "I'm sure." "Then everyone knows that you and I had sex." "Oh," mortified by the very thought, she said, "absolutely not. I don't want anyone to know. And since you believe it was a mistake, I'm going to assume you haven't told anyone." He didn't comment. And because he said nothing to deny it, she concluded he hadn't changed his mind. His obvious insensitivity hurt and embarrassed her. She pushed her chair back and stood. "Soon we'll forget it happened. In fact, I've already forgotten." She lied. "Well, I haven't." Just sitting across from Isabel made Michael want her. She was so damn beautiful and sexy and loving, and he remembered how good it had been between them. Her next comment pulled him from his erotic thoughts. To Isabel, changing the subject seemed safer than getting into a talk about sex. "I'm still feeling jet lagged. What about you?" "I'm okay. Listen, we can't leave just yet. I'm waiting to hear from Nick. He's gathering some information for me. Can't you talk to him in the car?" "Not until I know you are going to be safe. That's when we leave." What kind of cryptic answer was that? "Has he talked to the police here?" "We both have." Before she could Before she could ask him what, if anything, he had found out, his phone rang. That one call turned into six. Isabel sat on the bed to wait, and within minutes she fell asleep. It was close to 2 in the afternoon when Michael nudged her awake. We can leave now." Isabel sat up and stretched her arms over her head, feeling refreshed from her short nap. "I'll be ready in a few minutes," she promised. Michael leaned against the door and waited with a resigned look on his face as Isabel got organized. After looking for and finding her jacket with the hood, then checking to make sure she had her cell phone and charger, she slid her crossbody bag over her shoulder and said, "Let's go." "Where's your car parked?" He held the door open for her, and as she walked past, she said, "Down the street. I'm going to drive it to Henson's Motor Store and Smart Repairs. It's just a couple of blocks away, and the owner will see that the car is returned to the rental agency." "Why are you taking to the motor store?" He had asked he had asked what he thought was a normal question. Her reaction wasn't normal at all. Her face turned bright pink faster than a blink. "I'm driving the car there because it's easier than driving back to the airport. Couldn't you just leave the keys at the front desk?" She rushed down the stairs. No! What wasn't she telling him? She reached for the front doors, but he grabbed her before she could go any further. When we are outside, you stay close to me. Do you understand? Yes, I do, she responded. They stopped by the car in the lot behind the hotel. First, so that Michael could put her bag in the trunk. It was a dark four-door sedan, big enough for him to drive. Then they walked on to the front of the rental car. It's the red one, just down by the corner. The closer he got, the more Michael wanted to laugh. The car was the size of a go-kart. With his long legs, there was no way he could get behind the wheel. His concern for the dimensions of the car, however, was quickly erased when he saw the scratches. They edged the driver's door and spread in a wing-like pattern across the passenger door in the back. He had a feeling there were matching scratches on the other side. Curious, he walked around the car to find out if he was right. He was. There was a small dent in the fender as well. Isabel stood on the sidewalk, hands folded, anxiously waiting for him to comment. She didn't want to fight, but she would if he said anything sarcastic. Did you leave anything in the car? He asked. No. Doors locked? Yes. Okay, let's leave it here, and we'll drive my car to the body shop and drop off the key. I could drive it over there. God, no. Let's leave it here, he said instead. Now he doesn't want Isabel to be driving because, as we have read, Isabel is sort of a reckless driver. Something else wasn't quite right about the car, but it took him a minute to figure out what it was. In his defense, the deep scratches and dent had held his attention and had distracted him. Where are the side mirrors? She answered without hesitation. In the back seat. She had even knocked off the side. Oh my God. She has wrecked these people's car. Since Michael didn't seem to have anything to say about that, Isabel felt she needed to explain. The roads are extremely narrow up here, and they walked back very, very narrow. And as they walked back to his car, he draped his arm around her shoulders. Good to know, he said. Oh my God. So Isabel has an excuse for having scratched the car and broken off the side mirrors. Now, Michael is going to make sure Isabel is safe in Scotland as she goes to sign the paperwork for the inheritance that she has over there. Now, when we come back tomorrow, we will continue the reading of the book Grace Under Fire. We will be reading chapter 23 when we come back tomorrow morning. So come on with me, guys, tomorrow morning. Join me tomorrow morning earlier than now when we will be reading the book Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. We'll be moving on to chapter 23. Until then, my friends, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. Now, we're going out to go mow the lawn. All right, have yourselves a great day, everybody.